It's the end of another year of cinema going for me, which means it's time to reveal my top 10 list. But instead of simply ranking the 10 best films of the year, I decided to widen my list's parameters to include anything I've watched theatrically this year, regardless of when it was first released or what it even is. This means films from the end of 2024 that I didn't get around to watching until the beginning of 2025 are eligible, just as, similarly, films from the end of 2025 that I won't get around to watching until the beginning of 2026 will be eligible for next year's top 10 list. So, here are the top 10 films I watched theatrically in 2025. 10. Royal Ballet and Opera 2025-26 La Fille gardée. It's taken me a while, but I think I finally figured out what it is I like about ballet. It exists on the border of wakefulness and dreaming, the liminal space between the conscious and unconscious mind. I prefer the ballets that are more light-hearted and have happy endings. It's like watching a doll's house come to life with pretty colours, fairy tale sets and outfits to die for. Watching it makes me feel like I'm sinking into a big pastel-coloured pillow and disappearing into a world of fantasy and grandeur. 9. Weapons. Weapons is scary and clever. The mystery didn't lead where I expected, and without describing the third act, what I will say is that it's certainly the most memorable sequence I've seen in a film all year, and nothing could have prepared me for it. There's one scene with Benedict Wong in a kitchen. Holy shit, I had to hide from the screen at one point because it was so brutal. I love watching a film and realising it's been made by a director who clearly, 1, has been allowed to make the film they want to make, 2, knows exactly how to do it, and 3, trusts the audience to go with it instead of explaining everything straight up. This is only Zach Cregger's second feature film after Barbarian, which I also liked, and already it's obvious that he's one of the few up-and-coming filmmakers to watch right now who's going to be a big deal within the next few years. This won't be the last time I mention him this week either. 8. Royal Ballet and Opera 2024-25, Ballet to Broadway, Wheeldon Works. Wheeldon Works is an anthology of 4 single-act ballets by the Royal Ballet's artistic associate, Christopher Wheeldon. Personally, I liked this slightly more than La Fille gardée because the format means there's more variety. The second ballet, The Two of Us, is actually my favourite of all the ballet I've seen so far, probably because I'm more familiar with the music. Both Sides Now is one of those great songs that works in practically anything. 7. Final Destination Bloodlines. Going into this, I expected at the very least to be entertained by the gruesome deaths that happened to some of the characters, and I was. The MRI scanner, tattoo parlour and bin lorry sequences were the particular standouts for me. They're planned like clockwork or a Rube Goldberg machine and are so squeamish to watch because they're within the boundaries of believability. I didn't expect to laugh as much as I did either. The prologue is an action-packed song and dance number like something out of classic Hollywood, yet it never felt forced or gimmicky. It's definitely not how I thought a Final Destination film would begin, but it sets the tone really well. But what surprised me so much is how invested I became in the characters. This has to have the best ensemble cast of the year, particularly the trio of Caitlin Santajuana, Dal Briones, and Richard Harmon. Something else I liked was how it does something new with the concept of Final Destination, rather than just rehashing previous films. How many other fifth sequels can claim to have their series' highest critic rating and box office gross? I think Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein did a great job reviving a flatlining franchise to make it better and more popular than ever before. 6. Together. This was the biggest surprise of the year for me. First of all, what makes it so watchable is Alison Brie and Dave Franco. Obviously that's because they're partners in real life, which explains why they have such a good chemistry with each other on screen, but I thought that also added an element of voyeurism, as though they were sharing their own personal relationship with the viewer and inviting them into that intimacy. It feels slightly transgressive just to even watch this, but also I think the ending raises an interesting question. I won't go into it because of spoilers, but I don't think it's a bad ending at all. If anything, I think the two main characters actually get the best ending. Personally, I'm with the character who's presented as the villain on this. When you think about it, he's right about everything, and the way his character is written does sort of make the case for that, but even if you think I'm wrong, I like that the film at least got me thinking about this stuff. The best films continue even after the credits roll. It's marketed as a horror film, sure, but that's only because it has the aesthetic of one, and because the force encountered by the main characters does appear to be scary at first, but it's more beautiful than it is horrific. It's like a poem. Ultimately, this is a film asking, if you met your soulmate, the one person in the cosmos you were destined to be with forever, how far would you be prepared to go for that perfect relationship? 5. The Naked Gun. This is by far the funniest comedy of the year for me. Liam Neeson really is the natural successor to Leslie Nielsen. He understands the material perfectly and delivers each line with exactly the right intonation. Akiva Schaffer took the perfect approach. Instead of just trying to reinvent the wheel, he just copied it. This is not a remastering, it's just an emulation, and given the original film trilogy and the television series it was based on worked perfectly fine the way they are, I think they did a great job modernising the content of the comedy without compromising the form that comedy takes. It's basically a fan film produced on a studio budget by actual professional filmmakers. But for The Naked Gun, that's exactly the right way of doing it. I'm pretty sure every single scene is funny. Even just watching the trailer again reminded me of how much fun I had. Number 4. Thunderbolts. I was sceptical about this one, not only because Marvel hasn't exactly been on a winning streak since the end of the Infinity Saga, but also because the cast are B-tier supporting characters from previous films, which did come across as Marvel scraping up leftovers from the bottom of the barrel, and maybe those low expectations were an advantage in the end, but I solidly enjoyed it. I was, and mostly still am, legitimately entertained by most of Marvel's pre-pandemic films, and Thunderbolts is very much a return to that form. Except for one clear difference. Florence Pugh. She's one of the best actors working today, and I think it's actually this kind of film, rather than her better-known work, that proves that. It's not surprising to see her give an excellent performance in Oppenheimer or Little Women, but for a Marvel film, she could just phone it in simply to get the paycheck, but she doesn't. She brings the same commitment that she brings to a prestige picture, and it's refreshing to see someone not draw that distinction and instead see the film as a film, regardless of its genre or reason for being made. Number 3. Superman. This was one of my most anticipated films ever, actually, and it didn't disappoint. As the first film in the new DC universe, this is essentially James Gunn's mission statement, outlining his different creative philosophy compared with Marvel. And the biggest difference is that rather than trying to simply imitate Marvel and inevitably failing, DC is going to do its own thing. Instead of building a universe, character by character, they're going to begin with a universe that's pre-existing and already inhabited, then jump straight into it. And as a viewer, this made such a massive difference because I felt as though I were being given a complete experience instead of just one piece of something else. This is the equivalent of the rare AAA game that's actually finished, rather than just a glorified digital storefront. But also, it's a Superman film that isn't afraid to be a Superman film, that isn't afraid to embrace its comic book roots. People say Superman is a boring character and like to pick him apart, but that's because previous Superman films have never addressed those common criticisms before, whereas, rather than avoiding or ignoring them, James Gunn seems to have used them as a starting point and built the story from there, and the result is an on-screen Superman I've been waiting my whole life to see. David Corenswet is the Superman for this generation. He's big-hearted, inspiring, full of hope, and most importantly, thoroughly human, which is what so many people miss about him. He happens to have been born on another world, but everything about him is the product of growing up on Earth, and this Superman film is the first one to actually make that the whole point of its story. Number 2. Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Yes, this is a re-release, but I did watch it theatrically this year, so, by the parameters I myself set, it qualifies. Quentin Tarantino developed Kill Bill as one film before the distributors overruled him and released it as 2 volumes. The Whole Bloody Affair isn't simply those 2 volumes stapled together and shown back to back. There are some differences, and I could talk about how effective those alterations are, but I'd never actually seen either volume before The Whole Bloody Affair. Whether this was a better way of experiencing Kill Bill for the first time, I have no idea, but it is the way Tarantino originally intended for it to be seen, so as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. What I will say is that, including this one, I've now seen 5 Tarantino films, and I think this is his best so far. However, given all the action in Act 1, Act 2, being mostly dialogue and exposition, comes across as a bit of an anticlimax. Had Volumes 1 and 2 simply been released as they are, Volume 1 would definitely have made my top 10 list, and Volume 2 definitely wouldn't have. But The Whole Bloody Affair is one film, and rating it as one film, I think the first act really is strong enough to place it in my number 2 slot. And number 1 is Back to the Future. Yes, Back to the Future. I stand by it. I said that anything I watched theatrically this year qualifies, regardless of when it was first released. Back to the Future was re-released for its 40th anniversary, and I have to say it was the best cinema experience I've had all year. There's no point explaining why I like Back to the Future so much. It's Back to the Future. If I were to actually explain what I love about the film, we'd be here all day, but you don't need me to. Anyway, needless to say, even though I'd already seen it 100 times before, watching it theatrically really was like watching it for the first time. The dramatic moments were bigger, the emotions were more resonant, the details were more noticeable, the themes were more apparent, the jokes were funnier, the overall experience was more exciting. The cinema is not a glorified DVD player. Watching something in the cinema really is better than watching it at home. I'm so glad this was re-released, so I could finally watch it the way I was born too late to watch it the first time around. It's an experience I'll always treasure. So those are my top 10 films I watched theatrically this year. La Fille, Gardée, Weapons, Ballet to Broadway, Wheeldon Works, Final Destination Bloodlines, Together, The Naked Gun, Thunderbolts, Superman, Kill Bill The Whole Bloody Affair, and Back to the Future. For New Year's Day, I'm going to be posting my list of my most anticipated films of 2026.